Come on, just a little more effort, you're almost there. She let out a strained groan. At the southernmost edge of the world, in one of the most remote and untouched lands, visited only occasionally by a few adventurous explorers, somewhere in the Koloa region, a voice of encouragement and a strained groan broke the quiet. The owner of the groan was a woman with reddish-brown hair and blue eyes. Through the simple clothing characteristic of the Siraf wetland, her taut muscles stood out on her forearms and calves. A moment later, Misa exhaled heavily and set down the rod she had been repeatedly lifting and lowering. She dropped to the ground, chest heaving.
Ha ha! I can't do any more.
What a shame. I thought you could manage one more.
Turan, the young man helping her from the opposite side, clicked his tongue as he watched Misa lying on the ground, then put the metal rod back in its place. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a long metal rod, but it was a magic artifact that Misa had crafted herself. Its effect was to increase its weight when infused with magic power. For nobles of their status, tools like these were necessary to apply enough resistance to effectively train their muscles. Of course, simply increasing the weight would cause one's body to sink into the soft ground, so they also had to use earth manipulation magic to reinforce the terrain.
I think this should be enough physical training for now. Lately, it seems like your muscle mass isn't increasing at all anymore.
Finally, not so rough.
As Turan firmly massaged her trembling calves and thighs, Misa let out a sharp scream. While reclaiming the wetland, the two had taken the time to help each other train whenever they had the chance. Since Misa had previously only been able to train sporadically due to time and environmental constraints, her progress had been exceptionally fast. Though she had naturally slender bones and couldn't develop a heavily muscular physique, her once delicate frame had gained a more defined shape, and her strength and endurance had noticeably improved. At this point, her physical abilities were even slightly superior to Turan's, when he wasn't activating any bloodline abilities related to close combat. Of course, Turan himself had also become sturdier than before. Since he had undergone an intense training session with Haram in the past, he hadn't experienced a dramatic transformation, but he had gained more muscle, making his physique even more masculine. In contrast, their third companion, Solif, had already trained his body to its limits within House Varaha, so he would either assist in their training or go off to handle other tasks, as he was doing now. Leaving Mesa to rest a bit longer, Turan leaped up onto the embankment and looked south toward the land they had already reclaimed. Beyond the horizon, an expanse of dry land stretched endlessly. He thought to himself, they had really done a lot. It had been 2.5 months since Turan and his companions arrived in the Koloa region. Thanks to their increasing proficiency in using magic for reclamation, they had managed to reclaim nearly a third of the area they had originally planned. If they turned the reclaimed land into farmland, it would be enough to feed hundreds of thousands of people. Of course, a librarian they had consulted had warned them that the soil in this region might not be ideal for farming. Still, considering that this was the largest expanse of flat land not only in the Koloa region, but across the entire Siraf wetland governed by Lavitas, it was an astonishing feat. Turan turned his gaze over the reclaimed expanse and reflected. Honestly, there was no reason for wizards of this caliber to dedicate themselves to wetland reclamation. People with the ability to establish a great noble house had no reason to invest their efforts in such trivial tasks, unless, of course, they were seeking the aid of the world's greatest healer. But that didn't mean this work was completely meaningless or just exhausting labor. Through the reclamation process, they were gaining experience in handling large-scale magic, and they also had the opportunity to train their bodies. While traveling, it wasn't impossible to keep up with physical training, but it was never as effective as staying in one place. Lost in thought as he gazed at the reclaimed land, Turan suddenly sensed a powerful magical presence from behind him. Along with the powerful presence, there was also a faint one lingering nearby. A moment later, Solif emerged from the northern swamp, waving his hand as he called out,
"Hey, Turan, I'm back."
I figured you'd be arriving around now. Nothing unusual happened?
What could possibly go wrong?
Beside Solif, a knight named Yaz followed, looking half-dazed. Solif had gone to check on Yaz since it was about time for him to return, but it seemed they had run into each other and ended up coming back together. Yaz appeared completely out of sorts even as he was being pulled up onto the embankment by Solif.
Great One, Yaz pays his respects.
You returned that lizard properly, right?
Yes, more importantly, I had no idea that person was a noble.
The reason Yoz was so shaken was that he had just learned that Solif, or more precisely, Phil, the name Solif used while disguised behind a mask, was actually a noble. Although Yoz was not like the ignorant commoners who regarded nobles as gods, he had nonetheless been giving orders and teaching a superior like a mere subordinate. Now that he realized this, how could he possibly feel at ease? In truth, Solif could have continued pretending to be a knight if he wanted, but in order to use magic properly in front of Yoz from now on, he had to reveal his identity. Turan considered what this might mean. If Yoz reported back, Lavitas would probably learn that Phil was actually Solif. But Turan was not particularly concerned. The head of House Lavitas and Rita likely already had a rough idea of Turan and his companions' capabilities. Unless they were complete fools, they would not choose to antagonize two nobles of near family head rank, and at least one noble of direct heir status, just to curry favor with a great noble house too far away to exert any real influence, especially when all three of them were wanderers with no fixed base, meaning they could go anywhere and retaliate freely without fear of repercussions.
I told him not to worry, but he wouldn't listen. Stubborn knights like this are rare.
Calling that stubbornness, well, whatever. If you're not too tired from the journey, how about we start by checking out the reclaimed areas?
Yes, sir.
Perhaps because Turan and Solif remained composed, Yoz seemed to regain some of his composure as well. Descending from the embankment, Solif spotted Misa, still drenched in sweat and resting, and asked with a sly grin.
So, what did you two do while I was gone?
Worked on our bodies.
That's it?
That's it.
Damn it. I even set things up for you two. What is wrong with you two?
Hearing Solif grumble from afar, Misa infused her training equipment with magic and hurled it at him. Solif yelped and swiftly dodged. The magic-infused weight crashed to the ground with a loud bang, and the earth cracked beneath the impact. When Yoz first saw the reclaimed land up close, his initial reaction was pure amazement. He repeatedly ran his hands over the ground, exclaiming in admiration,
The ground is so firm and completely dry. I've never seen reclamation like this in my life.
Is that so?
Yes. Normally, newly reclaimed land is damp and soft, causing buildings to tilt or collapse easily. But this place is just like the land outside the Seraph wetland.
Of course, this was thanks to Turan, who had taken the time to repeatedly use his Earthmover bloodline and Rapid's bloodline abilities to harden the ground and drain excess moisture. Naturally, he had not dried it out so much that no life could survive. He had adjusted it just enough to resemble a typical plain. He wondered briefly if he had overdone it. He had followed the optimal wetland reclamation method he had learned from the librarian, but judging by Yoz's reaction, he might have made it excessively perfect. If he had skipped the complete drying and compacting process, the reclaimed area could have been 1.5 times larger than it was now. Though he felt a bit regretful, Turan quickly decided that it was better to do things perfectly, since they were already putting in the effort. When people eventually settled here, they would surely appreciate living on more stable land. But Yoz's admiration lasted only a moment. As he quickly explored the surroundings, his amazement soon turned into sheer disbelief. It took an hour just to walk from the northernmost point to the southern river that marked the boundary, and the entire expanse from the eastern end to the western end had been fully reclaimed.
What is this?
Why, surprised by how big it is?
Even as Yoz nodded at Solif's playful question, his mouth hung so wide open that it seemed like his jaw might fall off.
It's not just that. When I first took on this task, I thought it would take at least several decades.
Well, considering the level of power they had invested here, even the army of a high-ranking noble house would not dare to match them. Ignoring Yoz's shock, Turan gazed over the vast reclaimed land and asked,
So, do you have any advice for us?
Advice?
Since the three of us are beginners at this, I figured someone experienced in land reclamation might notice things that need improvement.
Before they left, Rita had told them that Yoz had been involved in several reclamation projects, including draining swamps and wetlands. At Turan's question, Yoz hesitated for a moment before speaking.
First of all, you need a way for the water to drain.
A way for the water to drain?
Yes, the rainy season will arrive soon, and in the current state, water will start accumulating here. The land absorbing it naturally won't be enough to solve the problem.
At Yoz's advice, Turan and his companions exchanged glances in disgust.
Should we channel it toward the river?
It has to flow to a lower area, so we should direct it downstream.
The reason the librarian had not mentioned this when they sought his advice was probably that he was unaware of just how much rain this region received. Yoz continued to offer useful suggestions. Rather than leaving the land barren, they should plant water-absorbing trees to regulate moisture. Instead of making the land completely flat, they should add a slight incline so water would naturally flow toward drainage channels.
We'll also need to settle people here.
That much?
Sounds like a hassle to protect them.
At Solif's remark, Yoz shook his head and began explaining. Strangely, his demeanor resembled that of the teacher he had once been, instructing Knight Phil. It seemed his old habits had not completely faded.
The heat and humidity here promote rapid plant growth. If left unattended, weeds will quickly take over, attracting animals or even magical beasts, which could lead to the embankment collapsing. Generally, most animals avoid humans except for a few predators, so having a stable population living here would help prevent such issues.
And how would they sustain themselves?
There are plenty of open-pit mines in this area. They could mine resources and trade them for food. Later on, once some of the land is converted into farmland, they could become self-sufficient.
As expected of someone experienced in reclamation projects, Yoz's detailed explanations were quite reassuring.
But can we really mine and sell resources as we please? Technically, this land belongs to House Lavitas, and we're just a reclamation team.
Yoz nodded at Misa's question.
I have already discussed this with the family head and prepared a document regarding that matter. We have been granted the right to use the mine's profits exclusively for the development of the reclaimed land.
Turan read the document Yoz handed him, and it indeed confirmed those terms. Seeing this middle-aged knight's outstanding competence, Turan began to see him in a new light. He had always assumed that a noble as powerful as the head of House Lavitas would have his own reasons for keeping a knight like Yoz as a close aide, but this level of resourcefulness was beyond expectations. He thought privately that he wouldn't mind recruiting Yoz as a subordinate, if he ever decided to settle down somewhere permanently. Of course, since Yoz was already a direct subordinate of the Lavitas family head, he likely had no interest in working under a wandering noble. After discussing the matter further with his companions, Turan decided to accept Yoz's proposals. By following Yoz's advice, Turan and his companions' reclamation project entered a new phase. The first task was to create a road connecting the northern boundary to the reclaimed land. It took just a single day to construct a road 100 meters wide and approximately 60 kilometers long. Afterward, Yoz, as a knight of Lavitas, personally negotiated with the knights of Koloa and began a large-scale recruitment of settlers. At first, people were hesitant about the idea of establishing a settlement in the desolate southern wilderness. However, when they heard that the land was filled with open-pit mines and that settlers would be granted vast farmland, people soon began to gather.
Can I really own my own farm? The gods who heal the sick have proclaimed it. They wouldn't lie, would they? I wouldn't ask for more if I could cover myself in gold and jewels.
Additionally, Turan and his group had gained a solid reputation in Koloa City by treating the sick, which further helped attract settlers. As a result, within just a few weeks, thousands of people began flocking to the reclaimed land.
All right, this is my home now. This spot is mine. Bullshit. What's going on?
Using the trees that Turan's group had pre-cut from the nearby wetlands, the settlers built homes, divided up farmland, and began mining the open-pit deposits, sparking all kinds of disputes. Since settlers had come from various villages around Koloa City, they naturally grouped themselves based on their places of origin. Fortunately, Yoz took command of a militia he had personally brought from Koloa City and managed to keep things under control. Once their territories were settled, the settlers spent the following months clearing weeds, preparing farmland, and extracting gold, silver, iron, and copper from the open-pit mines. As was often the case with untouched land, massive yields were possible with little effort, and the people sang songs of joy.
Ah, I'm getting hungry. Shall we head to the square? I wonder what's on the menu today.
One of the biggest issues that arose when so many people gathered was, of course, food. This problem was even more pressing in the Koloa region, as well as the Siraf wetland as a whole, due to their low self-sufficiency in food production. Even if they sent large quantities of ore to Koloa City in exchange for food, there was not much available on the market. They had also sent trade caravans to the northern cities, but it was clear that transporting food from there would take time. However, the settlers did not have to endure severe food shortages because Turan implemented the same method he had used in Kalamaf.
They're coming. Whoa, there are even crocodiles. It's a hippo. The hippo meat is ours.
Despite the approaching animals, the settlers showed no fear. They knew that these creatures were all under the control of a powerful wizard and would meekly offer up their lives.
Head inside the embankment and wait.
Having recently activated the ruler bloodline he had acquired from Nagin, Turan could now draw out large numbers of animals hidden in the untouched wetlands with only a minimal consumption of magic power. He could even control the types of animals being lured, excluding poisonous insects and other undesirable creatures with precise manipulation. For settlers accustomed to living near wetlands, consuming frogs and lizards was nothing unusual, so this ability was not particularly essential. Nevertheless, thanks to it, the settlers were able to hunt, butcher, and prepare their food with ease. Before long, the settlement had expanded to include not only housing and mines, but also restaurants, taverns, and even gambling dens. Solif, from time to time, would take off his mask and sneak into these places disguised as a commoner, using them as a means to relieve the fatigue of being stuck in an isolated location and to find a bit of happiness. Even in the ever-expanding settlement, where new forms of entertainment were emerging one by one, there was one pastime that people enjoyed the most, climbing up the northern embankment, which grew wider by the day. From there, they could directly witness the process of reclaiming the wetland. To the settlers, the magic that Turan and his companions wielded was nothing short of divine miracles. How else could one describe the sight of hundreds of trees bursting into flames, or entire swamps evaporating with a mere wave of the hand? At times, when magical beasts leaped out from the burning forest, Turan and Misa's lightning would crash down with a deafening roar, making the settlers' hearts drop in shock.
Oh gods.
Each time, the settlers on the embankment would prostrate themselves and offer prayers, just as humans in ancient times had once worshipped the Priya-god tribe. Faith, after all, had always arisen in such a simple manner. 3 to 4 months passed as they continued to expand and develop the settlement, finding enjoyment in the process. By the time they had reclaimed more than half of the designated area, Turan stretched out his hand toward BJ, a creature who came soaring down from the sky.
You've worked hard, BJ.
BJ's thoughts came through clearly. Hungry, give something tasty.
You didn't like crocodile meat, right? How about steamed carp?
The answer was an eager yes. Chatting casually, Turan reached into the pouch hanging around BJ's neck and pulled out a letter. Mesa, who happened to be nearby, noticed this and asked,
Ashiz again?
Yeah.
Even while being deeply engaged in the reclamation project in the south, Turan had not forgotten to send BJ to House Burke regularly to maintain communication. Since BJ carried no passengers, she could travel between the southernmost edge of the world and the Takin Plains, near the northern frontier, in just about 2 days, making this kind of exchange possible. Fortunately, all the replies he had received so far contained nothing but news of peaceful days. Occasionally, Ashiz would send newly written theater scripts, which Turan enjoyed reading. Solif had even tried to gather actors to perform one of them, but eventually gave up. Realizing that while the settlement had grown quite lively, it did not yet have people trained in acting or possessing the necessary talent. Turan leisurely read through the letter as usual, but his expression stiffened when he reached a certain line.
What is it? Something wrong?
I'll explain all at once. Saul, come here.
Why? It's my break, and I was about to go roll some dice.
Grumbling, Solif approached. Turan gestured for him to sit, then shared the contents of the letter with his companions.
It's not confirmed yet, but there's talk that House Aravion might start a war soon.
Upon hearing this, both of their expressions hardened, just like Turan's. For the people living on this land, war was not an unfamiliar occurrence. The various wizard families enjoyed all kinds of prosperity, yet they always wanted more, and the easiest and simplest way to achieve this was through war. However, a war directly led by a great house was a different matter. The more one possessed, the more they feared losing rather than gaining. Even the recent war between House Aravion and House Sahar had been the first war between great houses in 300 years, and now, just 20 years later, before the after effects had even subsided, another war?
Don't tell me it's with Zahar again?
One of the two asked.
It's obvious they're probably staging another fake war this time, too,
the other replied. Naturally, the first thing that came to the minds of Misa and Solif, Turan's 2 traveling companions, was that House Aravion was once again planning a fake war with House Zahar. However, Turan, the one who had been reading the letter, pointed to the lower part of the page, denying their speculation.
No, the target is House Carmine.
Solif went quiet for a moment.
Suddenly?
It's not that sudden. Others may not know, but we do, don't we? That their relationship isn't actually good.
Solif pressed on.
They said the god-ruling House Carmine has bad relations with both House Aravion and House Zahar. That side was using the power of the merfolks to oppose them, and...
Ah, the merfolks!
Misa exclaimed as if she had realized something.
Right. We gave the merfolks the great sea serpent as a gift. I thought it would take at least a generation for the results to show, but it's happening sooner than expected.
It was clear that over the past few months, the merfolks had used the corpse of the great sea serpent in some way to break free from the control of House Carmine. Realizing that the balance of power had shifted, House Aravion was now taking direct action against Carmine, and the fact that they had discovered this so quickly likely meant that they had already planted spies within House Carmine. Solif and Misa's faces stiffened as they considered the possibility that their actions might have triggered a war between the two great houses.
According to Ashiz's letter,
Turan continued,
the conflict started after suspicions arose regarding the death of an Aravion noble who had recently married into House Carmine.
As a justification for war, that's a bit weak,
Solif said.
Well, in the end, things will go as they want.
Turan paused.
Of course, right now, House Aravion's control over its own family has weakened considerably.
Logically, with House Zahar, whom they had fought in a bloody battle not long ago, still standing strong, picking another enemy was sheer madness. However, if they had struck a deal with the enemy behind the scenes, it might not be as risky. No, they might even be secretly receiving help from some Zahar nobles.
Are they planning to erase House Carmine completely this time?
Misa asked.
That could be the case.
Turan said.
If the gods are truly hostile toward each other, then it's unlikely to be another fake war like before.
Perhaps they would witness a real clash between gods this time. Not against a minor figure like Amir, whom they had encountered before, but an actual fight between the heads of House Aravion and House Carmine.
In any case, we can't just ignore this.
You're planning to get involved?
Solif asked.
I at least want to find out exactly what's going on.
Turan spoke as he looked between Misa and Solif. Although the situation had changed drastically compared to the past, he was still reluctant to reveal Misa to the main family of House Aravion. Likewise, Solif's face was already well known among the people of House Aravion, and if they used the transformation mask, then Turan wouldn't be able to hide his own face.
This time, I'll go investigate alone. You two should stay here and continue the reclamation project.
But that's dangerous.
Misa protested.
Yeah. No matter how strong you've gotten, if you get caught by a real god, you'll die,
Solif added. As the two protested, Turan shook his head calmly and presented a reasonable explanation.
I have no choice. There's only one disguise tool, and we can't just neglect things here either.
The reclamation of the southern region was a price paid in exchange for the House Lavitas family head's healing magic. Abandoning it due to an urgent matter would be equivalent to throwing away their trust. Considering that there were almost no healers capable of quickly and completely treating powerful nobles like Turan and his group, halting the work was simply not an option. After several rounds of arguments and persuasion, the two finally agreed to let Turan go alone to scout the conflict between the two houses.
I'm saying this again, but you really have to be careful. If it seems dangerous, just run away. Got it?
Got it. I treasure my life too, so don't worry.
As Solif expressed his concern, Turan waved his hand dismissively and glanced at Mesa. Unexpectedly, unlike Solif, who wore a worried expression, she remained rather composed.
It's fine. If you want, you can do something reckless. If you die, I'll hunt down whoever killed you and take revenge.
Ah, so that's how it is.
Turan let out a short breath of a laugh. A warning disguised as a threat. Don't get yourself killed by attracting the attention of someone too powerful, or else she'd end up dead avenging him. Her expression was too sincere for him to just laugh it off as a joke, so Turan had to repeatedly assure them that he wouldn't do anything reckless. After that, he went to find Yos, the knight from House Lavitas, who was overseeing the reclamation efforts, to inform him that he would be away for a few months. Right now, Turan was technically working as compensation for the healing he received, and Yos was the one supervising him.
Understood. That means the reclamation will be slightly delayed.
Yos responded indifferently to the news that Turan would be gone for a few months. Well, if no progress had been made at all, that would be one thing. But with more than half of the work already completed, it would be ridiculous to suspect that he was running away. Besides, it wasn't as if everyone was leaving. His two companions were staying behind to continue the work. What caught Yos's attention more was the unfamiliar man standing next to Turan, grinning from ear to ear.
The person beside you, don't tell me.
Ah, this is a friend of mine, Sol. He'll be taking over Phil's duties for a while. Say hello?
Hello.
Solif removed his mask and greeted him with an utterly shameless expression.
Wait, no matter how I look at it, aren't you the successor of House Varaha?
Seeing their expressions, Yos quickly swallowed the words that were about to escape his mouth, As one of House Lavatas' key administrators, he had apparently seen Solif's portrait before.
Just pretend we ran into each other by chance. You understand what I mean, right?
Ah, I understand.
Yos said. Even if Solif took off his mask here, there was little chance that word of it would spread far. This was the southernmost region of House Lavatas' territory, the remote outskirts of Koloa. Still, he had worn the mask just in case. But ultimately, it was more useful for Turan to be the one wearing it. After spending about a week wrapping up affairs, Turan went to see Misa before his departure. Ever since receiving the letter, she had put the reclamation project on hold and had been completely immersed in crafting a magic artifact.
I think it's about time for me to go. How's your work coming along?
Just finished, actually. Here.
As she handed him the object, Turan let out a small exclamation. A small hand mirror, with the handle and edges plated in silver. The craftsmanship itself was nothing extraordinary, but it contained an astonishingly powerful magical energy. It was even comparable to the guardian magic artifact that Turan possessed.
It's a paired item with the hand mirror I have.
Misa explained.
You can only communicate if both are infused with magic at the same time.
What's the range?
The farther apart they are, the more magic it will consume. If you're in House Aravion or House Carmine's territory, maintaining a connection for a long time with our power alone will be impossible.
I see. Communication-type magic artifacts do tend to be inefficient.
Considering that no Grand Noble of the Enchanter bloodline had ever existed before, Misa was likely the most powerful enchanter in history. Although it was an item created in just a relatively short span of a week, for an enchanter of her caliber to produce something with this level of efficiency, that itself was telling. At this rate, for ordinary nobles, communication would become impossible the moment they were more than a few hundred kilometers apart. It was clear now why the various wizard houses rarely crafted this type of magic artifact.
It's probably also because I'm still not fully accustomed to enchantment magic. Once I make a better version, I'll send it to you through BJ.
Don't push yourself too hard.
With Turan gone, the reclamation project would slow down, but it still had to continue. If Misa got too caught up in this, it would only cause problems. As they continued their conversation, and the time for departure approached, Misa suddenly pulled Turan into an embrace. Unlike before, when she had felt like nothing but skin and bones, this time it was a warm embrace, one that reminded him of when he had been held by his mother long ago.
Mesa.
Don't die.
Instead of replying, Turan simply patted her back. After finishing all preparations, Turan grasped the leg of BJ, his golden eagle companion, with his own hands and soared into the sky. While tying himself to a harness was more convenient, it didn't allow him to fully utilize the golden eagle's speed. Delighted to be flying alone with Turan again after a long time, BJ propelled herself northward with powerful gusts of wind at her back. Looking down at the ground below, Turan marveled at the rapidly passing landscape.
I knew you were fast, but you've really gotten even faster.
Even when he had first ridden BJ, he had been impressed by her speed, but compared to then, she was now on an entirely different level. Back then, she had only been around the mid to lower ranks among nobles in terms of magical beasts. Turan's weight of just over 70 kilograms had been enough to slow her down and tire her out easily. Now, with magic power comparable to that of the highest-ranking nobles, each flap of BJ's wings split the clouds apart, and the shock waves even reached the distant ground below. Had they been flying at a lower altitude, the winds alone might have been strong enough to send people flying. BJ, pleased by Turan's praise, flapped her wings even more vigorously. Flying in this manner and resting in uninhabited areas for 2 days, Turan covered nearly 7,000 kilometers and arrived at the Takan Plains.
You really did an amazing job, BJ.
BJ's reply came scratched into the dirt with her talons.
This was nothing. I could have been even faster alone. Not that it's because Turan is heavy or anything.
She broke off, clawing at the ground as she realized too late that her words made it sound like she was treating her friend as mere baggage. Turan chuckled at her reaction and stroked the feathers on her head.
If I had come here on my own, it would have taken at least 10 days without rest. Thanks to you, I saved a lot of time. Thank you.
BJ scratched her answer with obvious enthusiasm.
I want to keep traveling with Turan.
I appreciate it. But for now, I need you to help Misa and Solif. This is something I have to do alone.
Bringing BJ along would make it difficult to move around properly in disguise. After all, anyone traveling with a golden eagle would inevitably stand out. If a situation arose where he absolutely needed BJ, he would contact Mesa and have her bring BJ here.
All right then. Be careful on your way back. You know where to go, right?
BJ's response came with a slightly sulky scratch.
I know better than Turan.
Perhaps upset at the thought of being separated for a long time, she wrote her words in a petulant tone before taking off into the sky. Seeing his friend off, Turan immediately turned toward the nearby city of Zavalin. Of course, he used the transformation mask to disguise himself as an ordinary young man.
Thank you for your hard work.
Ah, yes. Thank you, young man.
Casually greeting the patrolling officers with an easy smile, Turan entered the city and expanded his senses to detect how many wizards were nearby. That one over there, a knight of Hausberg. Looks like they haven't assigned a separate surveillance team for this area. He had expected that they would have planted spies after the incident where they helped Mesa escape. But surprisingly, they hadn't gone to such lengths. Perhaps they had planted spies immediately after the incident, but decided to withdraw them after several months of receiving no news. Well, even if they intercepted the letter I sent to Ashiz, I didn't write anything meaningful in it anyway. When sending letters, Turan had deliberately avoided mentioning Misa at all, as if he had been traveling with only Solif. Moreover, since he had also been careful to leave out any clues that could hint at their location, even if someone had read the letter, they wouldn't have been able to extract any significant information. After spending a good amount of time scouting the city, Turan confidently stepped into Hausberg's mansion while using concealment magic. Even though it was broad daylight and several magic artifacts emitting light were active throughout the area, his concealment remained intact, though I can't maintain this for too long. Feeling his magic power rapidly depleting, Turan moved swiftly through the mansion. Before long, he reached Ashiz's room, shut the door behind him, and finally released his concealment. He let out a long, steadying breath. This kind of infiltration was only possible because he possessed an immense amount of magic power and had spent months living in this mansion, memorizing its layout. A regular noble from House Zahar would have exhausted their magic long ago. Lying down on the bed, Turan heightened his senses to an extreme degree using the sacred relic. He could sense the presence of various nobles from the head couple of House Burke to Ashiz's brother Mello, and even his teacher Haram. He had expected Ashiz to be out somewhere playing, but unexpectedly the boy was in the garden practicing magic, likely undergoing training. No suspicious individuals inside the mansion either. Good, I guess I can get some rest then. Turan lay back on the bed, letting his exhaustion from the 2-day journey melt away, as he waited for the room's owner to return. Ashiz returned about 2 hours later.
You wait, Turan?
Ashiz, the young contact whose letter had started all of this, stumbled back in surprise.
It's been a while, Ashiz. I'm glad to see you looking well.
Ashiz had been momentarily startled by the sudden presence of a brown-haired young man occupying his room. However, as soon as he saw the clothes, he immediately recognized Turan's identity. After all, he had made those clothes himself. There was no way he wouldn't recognize them.
Don't tell me you came because of the letter I sent?
Yeah. Plus, I wanted to check if there was any suspicious activity going on here.
When Turan confirmed that there didn't seem to be any spies inside the mansion, Ashiz let out a sigh of relief.
To be honest, I was a bit wary. I was worried that someone might secretly use a familiar face to get close to me.
That's not exactly a common ability, is it?
It isn't. But if you can do it, then maybe someone else can too.
Of course, considering that the mask Turan possessed was likely a magic artifact or even a sacred relic created using the power of the mimic bloodline, the chances of someone else having the same ability were nearly non-existent. It was highly probable that the mimic god had never left behind any descendants to inherit their bloodline. Still, being cautious of potential threats wasn't a bad mindset to have. After all, even Turan didn't fully know what they were capable of and what they weren't.
More importantly, explain things in more detail. Your letter was too vague. When exactly is the war supposed to break out?
That I don't know either. Even my mother probably doesn't. But it doesn't seem like it'll take too long.
Ashiz's voice dropped.
The main family has been placing massive orders for magic artifacts that grant resistance to cold.
Indeed, that alone was enough to make it obvious. They were clearly targeting House Carmine, which wielded power over water and frost. Through his deep conversation with Ashiz, Turan was able to gather several updates on the current state of House Aravion. He learned how the atmosphere within the main house and the vassal houses had changed, as well as how they were even spreading theatrical performances that demonized House Carmine to justify the war.
So that's how far they're taking it.
Turan's expression tightened.
You're not thinking of sneaking into the main house again, are you?
Ashiz asked.
Not this time. It's too dangerous.
Previously, Turan had been able to infiltrate House Aravion's main estate only because they hadn't expected the presence of an intruder. But now, while they might not yet know about House Zahar's concealment abilities, They were certainly aware that someone with an unidentified disguise technique existed. Attempting another infiltration under these circumstances would be nothing short of reckless. Even if Solif and Mesa were with him, they weren't confident they could stand against House Aravion's family head, and right now he was alone.
Instead, I think it would be more useful to infiltrate the other side. Could you help me gather any relevant information? Since their family is close by, I feel like I might find something if I search through the library.
The other side?
Ashiz's eyes went wide.
Wait, don't tell me.
That's right this time. I'm planning to take a look at House Carmine.
It had been about 2 days since visiting House Burke. Turan stayed in Ashiz's room collecting various information about House Carmine through the books that Ashiz brought him. There was much to learn, from the extensive history of their house since its founding to information about the vassals under them. Of course, Orem's library also contained knowledge about House Carmine, but the problem was that all of its information was outdated.
Hurry up and turn the pages already. How can a young man be so slow at reading?
You're just too fast, Elder. I've already finished reading this, you know.
Turan responded to the grumbling librarian while turning another page of the book. Originally a spirit of the librarian had the ability to never forget the contents of a book once read. So even if Turan forgot something later, he could always ask and be reminded.
A spirit, huh? Too bad I can't see it.
Do you think I'm some kind of spectacle to be gawked at?
Of course, from Ashiz's perspective, it simply looked like Turan was talking to himself in empty space. During the day, Turan diligently gathered information, and around midnight, he infused magic power into the handheld mirror to attempt communication with Mesa. Since they had agreed in advance to communicate at this time, it did not take long before magic power was infused from the other side as well, causing the mirror to distort.
Ah, it worked. Turan, can you see me clearly?
Yeah. It's working even more smoothly than I expected at this distance. The magic power consumption is manageable, too.
Beyond the mirror, Mesa's eyes sparkled with excitement, delighted that the magic artifact she had created was functioning properly. At that moment, someone beside her shoved her aside and leaned in to take a look.
Let me see, too. Oh, are you really in the Taken Plains right now? That's fascinating.
As Solif casually intruded, Mesa furrowed her brows slightly behind him and gave him a firm pat on the back as if telling him to move away.
Get your burdensome face out of the way.
Burdensome? That's harsh to say to such a handsome face.
After exchanging some light-hearted banter with Solif, Turan had to spend a bit of time appeasing BJ, who was still sulking on the other side of the mirror. At any rate, he was relieved to confirm that she had returned safely. Once things settled down to some extent, Turan gave Ashiz a chance to see Mesa's face as well.
Mesa?
It's been a while, Ashiz.
It's really you? Your hair color and eyes are the same, but...
Ashiz, who only remembered her from when she was as thin as a skeleton, gaped with his jaw nearly dropping at how much she had changed. Anyone who had known her before would have undoubtedly asked, "Who are you?" So his reaction was understandable. After staring at Mesa's face in amazement for a while, Ashiz murmured softly,
You don't resemble Aunt as much as I thought.
You think so?
Yeah. If anything, you seem to resemble my mother a bit more.
He paused.
Anyway, I'm really glad you stopped that ridiculous fasting. You never listened when I told you before.
Aha, ha.
Hearing Ashiz still believe that her refusal to eat had been for the sake of flight magic, Misa could only respond with an awkward laugh.
You didn't stop just because you wanted to look pretty for someone, did you?
That's not it.
Ashiz, who had been enjoying teasing her, noticed how Misa's blue eyes shifted nervously. He glanced at Turan, then lightly tapped the mirror to change the topic.
Anyway, this is the magic artifact you made?
Yeah. I didn't realize I had a talent for this kind of thing. Could you give me some advice?
I'm not sure if my skills would be of much help, but what issues did you have?
Though still inexperienced, Ashiz had received proper training as an enchanter, so he was able to pass along several useful techniques to Misa. About 20 minutes later, when the magic power ran out and the connection was cut off, Ashiz turned to Turan with a deeply moved expression.
Misa has completely recovered, and her expressions look much brighter than before. I'm really glad to see she's doing well.
Seeing Ashiz shed tears of emotion, Turan let out a small chuckle. He had known since their first meeting that Ashiz was a soft-hearted person who was easily moved to tears.
The joy of eating is an important part of life.
That's true. This is really nice. Seeing her face like this makes all my accumulated worries just disappear.
Watching Ashiz smile so brightly, Turan found himself smiling as well. The day after the dramatic family reunion, having gathered most of the necessary information, Turan left House Burke. Inside his large capacity pouch, he carried an additional 20 or so books that Ashiz had personally purchased for him.
It'd be boring, so you might as well read these.
Ashiz had handed them over with such a casual remark, but the books he gave were not something to be taken lightly. Although the Takian plains were abundant in resources and made luxury goods easily accessible, thick books that were neatly transcribed inside were not cheap. It was clear that Ashiz must have spent several months' worth of allowance to obtain them. As compensation for the books, Turan had left a pile of roughly smelted gold and silver ingots on Ashiz's bed before departing from the mansion. If he had tried to hand them over directly, Ashiz would have stubbornly refused, so this was the better approach. Leaving Zavalin City, Turan changed his appearance to that of another traveler and leisurely walked across the plains. The cooling breeze and the golden, rippling wheat fields signaled the arrival of autumn. He scooped up a handful of soil and examined it, lost in thought. It would be nice if the reclaimed land could become this fertile too. Was the soil composition important? He should take some and see if he could replicate this later. It was no secret that Aravian nobles struck their farmlands with lightning every year after the harvest. He did not understand the principle behind it, but if the same practice were applied to their reclaimed land, it might yield similar results. Of course, without an Aravian noble to summon lightning every year, maintaining such a method would be difficult. Walking along the outskirts of the city, Turan reached a secluded area and immediately used concealment magic before taking flight. This way, he would not have to worry about running into any wandering Aravian nobles. Several days passed as Turan flew east toward House Carmine, conserving his magic power along the way. His destination was the slash-and-burn farming village where they had once fought against Vyzen. As the sun began to set, Turan leisurely entered the village, only to be met with a resident pointing a hunting spear at him.
Who are you?
I'm a traveling wanderer who lost my way. Would it be possible for me to stay for just one night?
There's no place for guests to stay in our village. If you head down the mountain, there's a larger village below. Go there instead.
The sun has already set. How am I supposed to make my way down now? Please, let me stay for just one night. I don't mind sleeping outside.
The resident held Turan's gaze a moment longer, then lowered the spear.
Fine, but keep quiet and don't cause any trouble.
Perhaps due to the lingering trauma from Vyzen's massacre, the villagers remained highly wary of outsiders. Turan spent the night in the village, exchanging a few casual conversations with those keeping an eye on him to gather information.
Now that I think about it, there have been rumors lately about a noble who's been burning villagers alive. Has this village been safe?
Haven't seen anything. If something like that had happened, we probably wouldn't be alive to talk about it.
Judging from the village's intact condition, it seemed that Vyzen's death was still well concealed. After confirming his traces, Turan left the slash-and-burn village at dawn and headed straight for Avacha, the capital of House Carmine. Unlike before, when he had simply moved eastward toward the sea, this time he traveled along the grand roads of the old empire, mingling among commoners and picking up various stories.
I heard that a horde of magical beasts recently emerged from the sea.
Is that so?
Yeah. The high-ranking folks managed to stop them quickly, but the damage wasn't small. You'd better stay away from the coast for a while. I saw one myself. It was terrifying. That massive creature that swept through the village.
An old peddler, who was chatting with Turan while sharing a campfire in an open field, shivered as he offered his advice. Why had the sea magical beasts suddenly attacked the land? The timing did not align for it to be the result of the great sea serpent undead's rampage. Instead, it was more likely that the merfolks had triggered unintended side effects while using the serpent's corpse. Or maybe the merfolks had deliberately driven the magical beasts toward the coast. Turan sincerely hoped that was not the case. After all, he did not want to be in a situation where he had to kill comrades who had once fought together against a formidable enemy. For 3 days he walked along the road, gathering various stories from passers-by. When he finally entered Avacha, the capital of House Carmine, for the second time he immediately noticed that the atmosphere of the city had completely changed. The sailors and laborers wandering the streets all had gloomy expressions, and the merchants who were shouting to sell their goods carried not joy but desperation in their voices. The vibrancy and liveliness that he had once felt were now almost completely absent. After taking a brief tour of the city, Turan headed directly toward the residential area of the House Carmine family members. Their security was quite strict. Well, he supposed it was natural, since House Sahar was also a potential enemy. though not as fortified as House Aravion, which had built the Fortress of Light and even operated security checkpoints. The nobles of House Carmine still lived behind high walls, sealing off their main residence. Considering that in places like House Lavitas, even key members lived outside the main house, this level of security was still quite extreme. However, unlike House Aravion, which thoroughly blocked access even from the sky, the upper areas here were left open. Using concealment and flight magic together, Turan easily infiltrated by descending from above. If they planned to go to war with House Aravion, they should really pay more attention to aerial defense. Of course, since an airborne Aravian noble would be clearly visible in the sky, they probably relied on that as a safeguard. Once inside, Turan immediately heightened his senses and, just as he had done at the Aravion estate, infiltrated the mansions of nobles possessing strong magic power. Each noble had sealed their study in a variety of ways, but having already conducted similar infiltrations multiple times, Turan skillfully bypassed their security measures and searched through their libraries. What he had not anticipated, however, was how underwhelming the results would be despite his thorough efforts. Not here either. As he exited the third mansion, Turan clicked his tongue in disappointment. Despite searching the studies of 3 high-ranking nobles, he had found little in the way of useful information. At best, he had uncovered the same kind of corruption scandals common to any great noble house, things no different from what he had previously exposed in the Aravion estate. But that was not what Turan had come here to find. His goal was to uncover the nature of the relationship between House Carmine and the merfolks, how it had been formed, whether it was still intact, or, if it had broken, how that had happened. Just like the Aravian nobles, it seemed that the Carmine nobles also did not keep god-related secrets in their residences. Leaving behind his disappointment, Turan exited the Carmine estate and spent the night in a well-maintained inn nearby. Unlike his infiltration of the Aravion estate, where movement was heavily restricted, he was grateful for the relative freedom of entry and exit here. Sleeping in hidden corners of a mansion every night had been far more exhausting than expected. He turned the question over as he drifted towards sleep. Should he disguise himself as an insider and search somewhere even more secretive? The next day at noon, while wandering through the streets of Avacha, deep in thought, Turan heard a street vendor's cry. Unlike the other people, who were either depressed or filled with frustration, this one had a surprisingly cheerful voice.
"Get your skewers here. Freshly grilled skewers."
A bearded man, seemingly around 30, shouted energetically while skillfully working over a sizzling grill. His cooking seemed excellent, as customers kept coming without pause. Watching this scene for a moment, Turan eventually stepped forward and joined the line, purchasing a skewer.
Keep the change.
"Thank you, sir. Enjoy your meal."
As he ate a rather tasty pork skewer, Turan focused his consciousness on the street vendor who was busily working. In the pitch-black darkness behind the man's cheerful demeanor, a pair of eyes gleamed wide open, night-level magic power, unmistakable, bearing the emblem of House Zahar, a spy sent by Zahar. Judging by the fact that he was a knight, he must have been of a lower rank than Rito. Should Turan capture him and interrogate him, or simply follow him? After a brief moment of contemplation, Turan decided on the second option. While he was confident in his ability to make people talk through pain, there were always those on whom such methods would not work. Besides, intercepting intelligence from a spy would provide only pre-filtered and carefully selected information, far more efficient than sifting through a vast amount of disorganized records himself. Between the two, it was obvious which would be more useful. That evening, Turan waited patiently until the street vendor closed his stall and headed home. Using concealment magic, he trailed behind at a leisurely pace. Unaware that he was being followed, the vendor unknowingly led Turan to an old house on the outskirts of Avacha. Upon entering the house, the spy stretched and groaned as if exhausted, for a knight running a skewer stall should not have been tiring at all. Was he trained to keep up the act even when no one was watching? After putting away his merchandise and washing up, the spy collapsed onto the bed and soon began snoring. Only then did Turan start searching the house. After nearly 30 minutes of thorough investigation, he finally discovered a hidden stash of documents beneath the floorboards under the spy's bed. Perhaps the spy had not deemed it necessary to encrypt them, as the collected information was neatly organized in a way that even Turan could easily read. The locations, movement routes, and conversations of House Carmine's members. He had gathered quite a lot of information. Most likely, this had been obtained through internal collaborators or subordinates. There was no way he could have gathered such intelligence simply by grilling skewers. This street vendor was likely a mid-level operative, aggregating reports from underlings. It was a smart strategy. No one would ordinarily suspect a mere skewer vendor. and they had probably never anticipated that a wizard capable of detecting magic power would pass by and recognize a street vendor with night-level magic power. As Turan continued reading through the reports detailing various noble affairs, he came across information regarding Weizen, left with several members of a friendly vassal house but has been out of contact ever since. It is assumed that her family is currently on a pilgrimage outside the house's territory. It seemed House Carmine was not only unaware of Weizen's death but also had no idea that her entire party had been killed. Well, since he had disposed of them in a remote area, it was only natural that they would be difficult to find through conventional means. Turan clicked his tongue and continued scanning through the documents until his eyes widened at a section that had been underlined. On the 2nd day of the 9th month, a secret meeting of the House's key members is scheduled. If possible, infiltrate and gather information. A secret meeting scheduled for a week later, one attended only by the highest-ranking members. If he could sneak into this gathering, he was certain he could collect some highly valuable information. At dawn, after checking all the materials gathered by the spies, Turan neatly organized them and left the house. After closing the door silently, he took out a long wooden box from his large-capacity pouch. It was an item he had ordered a few immigrants to make during the land reclamation project in the south, a storage box designed to separately preserve strands of hair from various individuals. Inside lay strands of hair from his 2 comrades, a feather from BJ, and a strand from Godi Solif's father. The hair of the Zahar knight he had obtained this time now joined the collection. If he ever needed to find that person again, he could use it to track them down at will. After catching up on sleep until noon at the inn to recover from a full night's vigil, Turan had a delicious lunch and entered the residential area of the House Carmine nobles once more. Unlike his previous visit late at night, the bright daylight revealed people moving around energetically.
Let's see. If the knight's lodgings are over there, do I need to go to the next street?
By combining the basic knowledge he had gained from Ashiz and the intelligence from the House Zahar spy, Turan concluded that House Carmine had no significant internal factions. Just like House Lavitas, the family head was still relatively young at about 150 years old, so the question of succession hadn't arisen yet. If any distinctions existed, it was between the high-ranking nobles, including the family head, the younger nobles expected to reach that level, and the mid to lower ranks. Only nobles belonging to the main faction of the high ranks would be invited to secret meetings. Turan's goal was to secretly replace one of the attendees, and he had already chosen his target.
Found him. Onil Carmine.
The owner of the mansion Turan had arrived at, Onil, son of Gemel Carmine, the current family head's brother and a top-ranking noble, was himself a young nobleman of high potential. With a status like his, attendance at the secret meeting was almost certain. As Turan circled around and slipped in through an open window, a sharp crash rang through the mansion as if to greet him, the sound of glass shattering, a wine glass most likely.
Get the hell out, you bastards. You call this food?
Excuse me. Mani, wake up. Shh, take him out carefully.
Following the noise, Turan found a servant who had collapsed, bleeding from his forehead, while 2 others helped him out of the room. In the back, a young noble sat in an armchair, seething. The magic power emanating from him placed him at the upper class, though toward the lower end of that range. That was the owner of this mansion, Onil Carmine, the target Turan had chosen. He threw a glass and caved in someone's head. His personality was already showing. For whatever reason, Onil had stormed out of the dining room despite a luxurious meal spread before him. The exquisite Avacha-style seafood feast was left to the servants to clean up. Perhaps they were used to it. Without a word, they began eating the leftovers and only started complaining once their master was far enough away not to hear.
He's really going too far these days. How many times does he throw tantrums like this in a single day, right? This food is delicious. What's his problem? He just can't control his temper, that's all. But thanks to that, we get to eat well.
One servant mumbled while stuffing what appeared to be a grilled shrimp the size of an arm, likely from a magical beast, into his mouth hole. It did indeed look delicious. Turan discreetly snatched a piece of grilled salmon and slipped it into his own mouth without being noticed.
Hey, don't eat everything. Leave some for Tonin and the guys who took him away. At least he only smashed a glass this time. Maybe it's because he got scolded by the big master for killing the Boshu family last time. What big master? That bastard just lets him do whatever he wants. I wish I had been born a noble.
Their anger had apparently reached its peak because the servants began hurling crude curses at Onil, words so vulgar that any noble who heard them would have had the speaker hanged on the spot, without question. They cursed not only Onil but his parents for bringing such a man into the world and letting him run wild. Some even wished he would go on a pilgrimage and meet a gruesome end. There were certainly nobles who lacked the loyalty of their retainers, but someone as universally despised as this was rare. Turan allowed himself a quiet thought. Looks like I chose the right target. Wizards, as the descendants of the gods, were meant to protect humans, and humans in turn were expected to serve wizards. That was the law of the human world. Nobles, raised and educated under this principle since childhood, often looked down on commoners, but they did not personally abuse or torment them. Such behavior was considered far too undignified for a noble. Knights and nobles, moreover, generally did not take sadistic pleasure in tormenting the weak the way some commoners did. But occasionally, outliers like Onil existed, the kind of noble who directly harassed commoners in ways that even other refined nobles would find repulsive. This was precisely one of the reasons Turan had chosen to impersonate him. To erase any trace of his infiltration, he needed to eliminate the person he was replacing, and frankly, killing a decent person would have left a bad taste in his mouth. Listening to the servants' complaints, Turan followed Onil's presence out into the garden. Seemingly in the mood for a stroll, Onil wandered aimlessly. Then, without warning, he conjured a whip of ice in midair, and began slashing down the garden trees around him. A nearby gardener who had been trimming branches let out a horrified scream.
I don't like how they look. Replant everything.
Yes, master.
After crushing the gardener's spirit, Onil continued his rampage, tearing down walls because the stables smelled, breaking a knight's foot for the offense of glancing at him, causing havoc wherever he walked. Watching from concealment, Turan let out a short, incredulous breath. He had heard the stories, but the man was like a damn child. Considering Onil was already over 60, his tantrums were nothing short of disgraceful. And yet, shockingly, this was Onil holding himself back. His father had scolded him recently for beating his concubine and her family to death. Onil kept 3 concubines instead of a formal spouse. One of them had died from his excessive cruelty. When her father and brother came to protest, he killed them too. Even given a concubine's lower status, such an act was considered outrageously unreasonable. Onil had been severely reprimanded by his father and placed under house arrest. He had apparently killed multiple servants in his youth as well, some intentionally, some by accident, which was why people feared him and why he couldn't take a proper wife. Turan continued to shadow Onil, meticulously analyzing his speech patterns, gestures, and expressions. Last time, when he had impersonated Cadram, he had been too hasty. That had nearly gotten him caught by someone close to Cadram. This time he would be more thorough. 3 days passed. Aside from sleeping, Turan dedicated every waking hour to observing and mimicking Onil's every move. Just as actors he had seen in the past had recreated historical figures, he aimed to replicate every aspect of Onil's behavior with perfect fidelity, watching as Onil invited friends over to gamble or took women to his bedroom, paying close attention to every minor habit. Then unexpectedly Onil's father arrived at the mansion. Gemel Carmine, top-ranking noble and brother of the family head, stepped inside with a hard expression.
I hear rumors that you're still running around like a delinquent.
Onil straightened.
Father.
You're aware there's an important family meeting in 4 days, aren't you?
Yes.
I'd rather tell you not to come, but since none of my other children are worth anything, I'll allow you a seat. Do not cause any trouble there.
Yes.
Within the mansion, Onil was a tyrant, yet he couldn't even meet his father's gaze. He answered in a subdued voice and said nothing more. Still, it was good news for Turan. The meeting's attendance was now confirmed. Given how utterly disgraceful Onil was, Turan had wondered whether he might be excluded from such a gathering, but even in a great noble house, individuals of his magical potential, upper class, with room still to grow, fewer than 20 in the entire family, were too valuable to discard over a flawed character. Jamil clicked his tongue at his cowardly son and left the mansion without another word.
Damn it, damn it, damn it.
As expected, the moment Jamil was gone, Onil flew into a rampage, smashing up the entire reception room. In the process, one servant suffered a broken arm. Having received the confirmation he needed, Turan began a careful experiment the next day. Seizing the opportunity while Onil was out of the mansion, he took on the man's appearance, dressed in the same clothes, and summoned a servant to order tea.
Hey.
Yes, master.
Bring me a cup of tea. Anything will do.
Understood.
Whether due to the effectiveness of his practice or simply the lack of familiarity between Onil and his retainers, the servant brought the tea without the slightest suspicion. After a few more covert interactions with different servants throughout the mansion, Turan became confident that his performance was flawless. On the dawn of the 6th day, Turan stood beside Onil as usual. The man lay sleeping alone after a night of violence with one of his concubines, and looked down at him. He gazed at the face illuminated by moonlight for a moment. Then he drew Haram's dagger and cut the throat. Blood sprayed across the bed. Like the Aravian knights who had faced House Zahar in the past, O'Neill died in a single strike without ever knowing it was coming. A pitiful end for a high-ranking noble of such powerful magic. Anyone who witnessed it would understand why Aravian nobles were so obsessed with maintaining their defenses. Considering everything O'Neill had done, he got off easy. Turan watched and waited. No god's soul emerged from within the body, something he had prepared for, however unlikely. Had it happened, he would have had to abort all plans immediately and flee. It was fortunate. He absorbed the dead man's magic power, then extracted every drop of blood that had soaked into the bed and blankets, collecting it in a container prepared in advance. The corpse and the container went into his large capacity pouch. Turan took on O'Neill's appearance. The switch was complete. Not a trace remained. From now on, he was O'Neill Carmine. On the day of the meeting, Turan ate breakfast with full confidence, throwing his stew onto the floor exactly as O'Neill would have, tormenting the servants with manufactured displeasure. His performance was, if anything, slightly milder than the original's. The servants simply cleaned up the mess without visible distress. After the meal, Turan called over a few of O'Neill's so-called friends, subordinates in all but name, and played a simple card game, using the time to confirm once more that his disguise held. As the sun began to set and the appointed hour arrived, a carriage pulled up in front of the mansion.
It is time for the meeting, Master.
I know.
O'Neill's butler guided him with a posture as rigid as marble. Turan's sharp sense of smell told him the man despised the person he was guiding. He said nothing and boarded. The carriage set off immediately, heading straight for the heart of the Carmine residence, the family head's estate. So far, so good. From past experience, Turan knew that while magical artifacts existed capable of detecting even House Zahar's concealment, none had ever been able to see through the mimic god's mask. There was no such thing as an artifact capable of detecting another artifact. As expected, the mysterious barrier installed in the family head's estate did not react when Turan passed through it. The carriage stopped. Turan opened the door and stepped out.
O'Neill, what brings you here? I thought my brother wouldn't invite you.
Several Carmine nobles were already gathered in front of the mansion. A middle-aged man addressed Turan with a crooked expression. O'Neill's maternal uncle, based on the information Turan had gathered.
Yes, Uncle. Father was kind enough to let me.
The man's eyes narrowed.
Why are you suddenly calling me uncle? You used to just call me mister.
Turan hadn't been able to account for every minor detail. He feigned an awkward expression and excused himself quickly. Fortunately, since O'Neill was known for being submissive to those stronger than him, no one found the behavior suspicious. A short while later, Turan followed the other Carmine nobles into the conference hall within the family head's estate. 16 attendees in total, the most powerful among the 100 or more Carmine nobles. Seated at the head of the table was the Carmine family head, Rodor Carmine, gazing down at them with sharp eyes. He had a shrewd appearance, a long beard that lent him an air of dignity despite his relatively young age. So that was the Carmine family head. Presumably, the Priya god known as Lawyer resided within him. It made sense. Entrusting a host of this caliber to a subordinate would carry too much risk. And given the circumstances, there was a strong likelihood that other attendees in this meeting were also possessed by different gods. But simply looking around the room, it was impossible to tell who they might be. Before long, the meeting began. As Turan had anticipated, the discussion quickly turned to House Aravian.
How are the preparations for war coming along? The situation isn't looking good. The sea routes have been completely cut off for some time now. Moreover, the winds in the North Sea have died down, making conditions similar to the South Sea. Ship speeds have slowed considerably because of it.
Turan was grateful that O'Neill, being young, wasn't expected to contribute opinions or field questions. He sat quietly, filling his seat, absorbing everything. The discussion continued for some time until the topic he had been waiting for finally arose.
Ranusa, is there still no contact with the merfolk?
Ranusa replied,
No. From the whales down to the rest of the merfolk kingdoms, all of them are refusing communication. Even the Blue Coral Crown's command is being ignored.
Blue Coral Crown. That had to be the secret behind House Carmen's control over the merfolk. Judging by the name, it seemed to be some kind of sacred relic.
Should we have taken down the undead spirit of the Great Sea Serpent the moment it appeared. There wasn't much we could do at the time. We were dealing with an urgent matter back then. By the time we resolved it, the merfolk had already caused trouble.
Turan had previously wondered why the Carmine nobles hadn't intervened when the undead spirit of the Great Sea Serpent was rampaging. It seemed they too had been occupied with something else at the time. What that was he couldn't ask, not here. If it was something O'Neill was already supposed to know, a question would raise suspicion immediately.
In any case, if the blue coral crown is ineffective, it likely means the merfolk have regained the protection of the old Great Sea Serpent. That is probably the reason behind the recent magical beast's rampage as well. Once the war is settled, I will handle this matter personally. We cannot afford to lose control over the merfolk.
With you leading the effort, my lord, we can rest assured.
Unlike the Aravian family head, Rodor Carmine personally involved himself in the affairs of his house. Judging by the lack of surprise from those around the table, this was nothing unusual for him. Then Rodor brought his hands together in a sharp clap, drawing every eye in the room to him.
Now that we've finished discussing internal matters, it's time to bring in an important guest.
One of the nobles stirred.
Ah, the one you mentioned before?
Yes, let them in.
At the family head's command, a firmly shut door on one side of the conference room swung open and a man stepped inside. He had been standing outside throughout the entire meeting. Turan had assumed he was simply guarding the room. He was not. He was an unidentified high-ranking noble. The man was middle-aged, with slicked-back black hair, gray eyes, and sharp, somewhat gaunt features. Was there a Carmine noble who looked like that? The House Zahar spy's documents had included roughly drawn portraits of Carmine nobles, but none resembled this man. Could he be some hidden asset of the Carmine family? And yet for some reason his face did not seem entirely unfamiliar. Turan couldn't say exactly who the man was, but there was an odd, persistent feeling that he had seen this face before, multiple times. Just as he was puzzling over the sensation, Rodor addressed the gathered nobles.
You are all meeting him for the first time. This is Talus Zahar, who has traveled all the way from the distant desert to mediate the war. Please give him a warm welcome.
Zahar. You mean that Zahar from the Enril Desert? I heard he is the younger brother of the family head. Why would such a major figure come all this way?
Originally in this world, powerful nobles rarely left their house's domain. First, the moment a family head or someone in an important position left their territory, it became difficult for them to care for their people and subordinates. Second, a powerful wizard was, in some ways, an easier prey than a powerful magical beast. Although the severity of magic power theft was considered a greater crime than cannibalism, wasn't the act of defining something as a crime rooted in the fact that there were those who committed it? In that sense, it was truly an anomaly that Talus, the younger brother of the House Zahar family head, the second in command of a great noble house, and a high noble possessing magic power at the very pinnacle, had appeared in the capital of House Carmine. Turan clenched his teeth and dug his fingernails into his knee to keep his turmoil from showing on his face. Talus Zahar, a noble whom he suspected to be his grandfather. The moment he recognized Talus's identity, he understood where the déjà vu he had felt earlier came from. Deep-set eyes that, when expressionless, appeared fierce, a sharp nose and eyes of a dark gray hue like solid metal. All the features that had seemed different from his mother, whenever he glimpsed his reflection in water, resembled this man. There was a good reason why both the Lord of Comad and Reto had looked at Turan, and immediately thought he was of Talus's bloodline. If the two of them had been commoners, anyone would have mistaken them for a father and son with a mere 20-year age difference. Talus's appearance seemed to have taken even the Carmine nobles by surprise, as the conference room quickly grew noisy. At that moment Turan realized that Talus was staring at him intensely. To Talus, the disguised O'Neill should have been just one of a dozen Carmine nobles in the room. Why, then, was he looking at him like that? Just as he wondered about it, Talus's nose twitched slightly, as if he were trying to catch a scent. Could it be that he sensed my emotions? For the briefest moment, Talus had undoubtedly noticed that Turan had felt something different from the others. It was a technique Turan himself had naturally used on others, but now that he was on the receiving end, it sent a chill down his spine. It truly felt like his mind was being read. Turan worked to calm himself and slowly lowered his gaze. When he finally looked up again, he was relieved to find that Talus's attention had already moved elsewhere.
As the head of House Carmine just mentioned, I am here to mediate this war. In such a chaotic world, should great houses really be fighting one another.
So, how exactly do you intend to mediate? If you promise to support us, we would be most grateful.
The one who spoke was Gemel, the father of Onil, whom Turan was impersonating. At his words, the other Carmine nobles also nodded in agreement.
Indeed. If House Zahar supports us from behind the scenes, we might even take this chance to reduce Aravian's power.
Given the known circumstances, this was not an entirely unreasonable assumption. House Zahar and House Aravion had fought a war 20 years ago. With that history, if House Aravion were now trying to crush House Carmine, a neighboring great house, it was only natural for House Zahar to intervene. After all, the enemy of one's enemy was a friend. However, while most of the Carmine nobles welcomed this optimistic outlook, a few did not seem pleased, as if they firmly believed that House Zahar would never cooperate with them. Those who were happy knew nothing, while those who weren't happy knew everything. Considering that the gods of Aravion and Zahar were not particularly hostile toward each other, if anything, the one truly in conflict with Zahar was Carmine's god. This alliance was never a possibility from the start. In other words, those who did not look pleased were likely the ones who knew the truth behind the scenes. The head of House Carmine, 3 mid-ranked nobles, 2 young nobles, and Gemel was one of them as well. Turan had felt it before in Aravion. Gods had a paranoid tendency to conceal the fact that they possessed human bodies to rule over noble houses. He had a rough idea why. If Turan had been an ordinary high-ranking noble and discovered that above him existed gods who perpetuated their existence by switching bodies, of course, he would have wanted a seat at that table. With the secret of immortality right before his eyes, who would want to die? Moreover, according to Ymir, this kind of reincarnation was not something that could be done simply or without cost. In other words, the number of available seats was limited. In such a situation, the more widely the secret spread, the more competitors would emerge. There was even the possibility that the majority, who were denied the right to reincarnation, might rise in rebellion to seize that right from the privileged few. As Turan was lost in deep thought, Talus continued speaking.
Of course, providing open support would be difficult, but we intend to assist by fully utilizing House Zahar's specialties. We can inform you of the exact composition of Aravion's forces, their movements, everything.
Invisibility and tracking, huh? Those are crucial in war. If Zahar's nobles help in secret, we might actually have a shot at this. But can this really be called mediation?
As many nobles, now feeling more confident, showed expressions of delight, one noble raised his hand and asked,
Would it not be possible for you to directly participate?
No, direct participation is absolutely out of the question. That is the decree of our family head.
A noble in the room clicked their tongue in frustration. Unlike just moments ago when he had been perceived as an uninvited guest, Talus now led the meeting as if he were just another Carmine noble. From the way they discussed how Zahar could assist in the war and how Carmine should cooperate, they truly seemed like perfect allies. In reality, they were just gathering intelligence from behind the scenes. Having personally witnessed Zahar's spies snooping around Carmine's affairs not long ago, Turan couldn't help but be astounded. While Talus was engrossed in the meeting with the Carmine nobles, the head of House Carmine remained seated at the highest position, silently observing the proceedings. He finally spoke after about 2 hours when discussions began to wind down.
Then, let us conclude today's meeting for now. Needless to say, our cooperation with Zahar must remain strictly confidential. Noto, O'Neill, Eris.
Yes.
Understood.
Yes, sir.
Turan quickly responded upon hearing O'Neill's name among the 3 cold. Fortunately, the other 2 seemed equally startled, so he did not stand out too much.
I am aware that there have been instances of careless slips of the tongue in the past. If something similar happens again, I will not let it slide. Keep that in mind.
At the chilling warning, Turan immediately bowed his head. At the same time, he noticed that Talus was observing him with an intrigued expression. A short while later, as he was leaving the meeting hall, someone placed a firm hand on his shoulder from behind.
Onil.
Yes, Father.
Do not forget what the family head just said. If any of our family's secrets are leaked because of you, I will personally kill you. Do you understand?
Yes.
Turan responded in a subdued voice, just as Onil would have, lowering his head. His performance must have been convincing, as Gemel showed no sign of suspecting that his son had been switched with someone else.
Good. That's how it should be. I have more to discuss with the family head, so go on ahead. If only you were always as obedient as you were today.
More to discuss, huh? Even just hearing that made it sound suspicious. Turan gave a respectful nod in response and left the room. Then, pretending to head toward the family head's residence, he waited until no one was watching and quietly vanished from sight. Turan had previously visited the residence of the Lavitas family head, but the Carmine family head's residence had an even higher level of defense. Every wall, door, and hallway within the building was enchanted with unknown magic, making it difficult to touch anything without caution. Fortunately, because of the meeting, many outsiders were expected to enter, so most of these enchantments were deactivated, making it easier for him to move around while concealed. Tracking Gemel's presence after they had parted, Turan soon spotted him walking down the corridor. Beside him walked the woman who was said to be the head's second cousin and her son. The three exchanged words as they walked.
What is he thinking? Did Caesar suddenly break ties with them?
No way. Just a while ago during the war, they were getting along well.
Well, lawyer must have something in mind. It looked like they'd already discussed something. Let's go hear what it is.
The term lawyer, and the way the mother and son spoke to each other so casually like friends, made it clear. They were all possessed by gods. A short while later, the three entered what appeared to be the family head's lounge. Inside, the Carmine family head and Talus were already reclining on long sofas, waiting for them. Talus called out,
"Took you long enough."
I don't see why I should hear that from a guest in my own house.
Your house? Isn't it your boss's house?
That's the same thing.
Unlike earlier when they had spoken with proper decorum befitting their apparent age, Talus and Gemel now bickered like ill-tempered young men. It was unsettling, as if young souls had taken residence in middle-aged bodies. Anticipating a long conversation, Turan settled into the shadows of a secluded pillar where the light didn't reach. As soon as he blended into the darkness, the amount of magic power consumed by his concealment spell noticeably decreased. He exhaled quietly, though not as brightly lit as the Burke family's mansion. This place also had elaborate lighting in the corridors and rooms, making it difficult to maintain concealment for long. Had he not disguised himself as Onil, he wouldn't have even had this opportunity. Just as he silently commended his own judgment, he heard voices from behind.
So, who's who this time?
You go first. Actually, I think I already know. Phoenix, right?
How did you know?
Among Caesar's subordinates, you're the only one who enjoys being sarcastic this much. I'm Glass. These two are Tora and Rainbow.
Damn, I thought you were Rainbow. Your speech has improved since last time.
Well, it's been, 500 or 600 years since we last talked like this. Some change was bound to happen.
I think it's been almost 1,000 years for me. Last time, I had no suitable body, so I took a break.
Maybe it's because your body is young, but your tone is really lively.
Catching up is fine, but let's get to business first.
Yeah, explain this to me. Why is Caesar suddenly offering to help us? Let's be honest, we haven't exactly been friendly before. That's right. It's suspicious. You already know we've been struggling to control the merfolk. What if you're using this chance to join forces and wipe us out instead?
At Gemel's question, the three Carmine nobles who had been speaking warmly just moments ago now glared at Talus as if their earlier friendliness had been a lie. Talus let out a small huff and replied,
I suppose I'll have to repeat the explanation I already gave your boss. Fine. To put it bluntly, our alliance with them, with Aravion, was tentatively terminated not long ago.
Why?
If we're talking about what was done to us, that bastard of a leader secretly created an artificial dungeon in our territory. It was designed to recreate the Night Hunter job change quest. Unfortunately for him, one of our people got caught up in it and died. Well, we confronted them about it and got an apology at the time. But not long after that, Gabby's intended body escaped, and they tried to blame us for it. They claimed that a spy we sent had helped in the escape.
Ah, that skeleton.
I mean, it was a masterpiece. It was the finest body we've ever created.
Honestly, the reason you went to war last time was to make that thing, wasn't it? No wonder they're suspicious.
The body they were referring to was undoubtedly Mesa. From their conversation, it was clear that the collapse of the Alliance had been caused by Turan taking her away. The god of Aravion had assumed that Zahar had been the one scheming behind their back. But more than that, they had gone to war just to create a body? What kind of insanity was this? Hoping for further details, Turan focused on the conversation. At that moment, the Carmine family head, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke.
I personally investigated what Phoenix just mentioned. It's true that Misa Aravian escaped. On top of that, I heard that Mario's body also ran away recently. I don't know the details, but it seems to be wandering somewhere in the South Sea.
For some reason, the past few years have been filled with one misfortune after another. We had our own mess to deal with recently, too.
What happened?
At his question, one of the Carmine nobles glanced at the family head. When the latter gave a slight nod, the noble answered,
One of our own secretly spread our family's secrets. We had to spend a lot of effort keeping things under control.
It seemed that one of Carmine's nobles had figured out the truth about the gods and tried to share it within their ranks before being silenced. That explained why they hadn't had the capacity to intervene in the Great Sea Serpent's undead incident. Just as Turan felt satisfied to have solved that mystery, Talus made an odd gesture with his index and middle fingers, then let out a sigh.
Seems like everyone's had a rough time. Living as a god is no easy task.
If we still had our original bodies, we wouldn't have to deal with such tedious problems.
Yeah, back then we could just destroy everything in our way.
From the way they talked, they didn't sound like gods who had lived for millennia. Instead, they came across as overworked managers or elderly men reminiscing about the past. To think that these were the true forms of the Priya god tribe, the deities humanity worshipped. Even though Turan had already suspected as much from what Ymir had told him, seeing it firsthand was still disappointingly underwhelming. Then, Talus tapped his finger against the floor to draw attention and spoke.
There's one more thing you should know.
What is it?
There's a Zahar noble who is outside of our control.
Then just capture them. If you lot are serious about hunting someone down, who could possibly escape?
At the Carmine noble's incredulous response, Talus shook his head.
Tracking magic doesn't work well without a proper medium. Besides, as I mentioned earlier, we've been busy dealing with the unfortunate death of someone we were planning to use as a body. We'll have to start searching in earnest from now on.
So, who is it?
Turan. If I had to guess, he's probably this body's grandson, so I suppose it's only fitting to call him Turan Zahar.